These are the top 5 tips for beginners at rock climbing. As a Ninja Warrior coach and an athlete myself, these are the exact tips that I give to newcomers that want to get into rock climbing, and the tips that I personally use and still use in order to get better. I am no way claiming myself as an expert rock climber, and my technique is always improving. Either it's your first time going to rock climbing and you want to show off, or you just want to find some ways to improve. Let's get into those tips to make you better at scaling those walls. Use the right muscles. Starting out, you're probably going to use those strength makers wrong. The biggest mistake is trying to muscle your way through, especially if you're a big burly man trying to show off, or if you think you have the upper body strength of pasta and think the opposite and you need way more upper body strength to do rock climbing. Both of those issues can be fixed using the right muscles. You want to use your legs way more than your arms and your biceps. Your legs are a much stronger muscle than your arms can ever be. Think about stepping up the wall, similar to stairs, rather than pulling yourself up like a pull-up. The more you try this stepping up and focusing on your legs, the better and more efficient you're gonna be, unless you're gonna waste time trying to pull yourself up when you really don't have to. While you are hanging on, watch out for not squeezing the rocks so hard. Your grip is gonna get exhausted very quickly and is doing extra work that is not keeping you on the wall better. Imagine drinking from a cup and always squeezing as hard as you can. Yes, you are making sure the cup doesn't fall, but at what cost? And while you're relaxed, another thing you do is keeping your arms straight. In a perfect scenario, you wouldn't need to pull ever with your arms. What you can do is have this huge emphasis on twisting, which will allow you to go higher up on the wall and climb without ever having to pull. This is done by swiveling on your feet, getting one of your hips close to the wall, and then you'll realize that your arms will be able to reach a lot higher. Then, keeping that arm straight, you should be able to stand up, just like the earlier technique, speaking about focusing on your legs, and you'll realize you'll be able to get a lot higher without losing a lot of energy. A lot of this body positioning is going to be explained in the further points. And any pulling action is going to be done with your back, the other big muscle. Man, you have so many big muscles, good for you. This is done by pulling your shoulders in and almost puffing out your chest. With your arms bent, it takes up way more energy that is unnecessary. Imagine carrying heavy bags. It makes sense to do it with straight arms rather than bent arms. You know what it's like trying to bring all those groceries inside in one trip. Keeping arms straight is going to force you to have better technique by allowing you to have better body positioning. Better body positioning will just result in better rock climbing technique. Since you are a beginner and you probably haven't learned these special moves in order to scale those pebbles, or you haven't been initiated in the inner circle, which is the only way to learn the real true way of rock climbing, better positioning is the first step towards that, and if you can have better body positioning, you will slowly learn technique as you go, and it might even just become instinct. Talked about straight arms as a fundamental when starting out. The next fundamental would be to keep your hips as close to the wall as much as possible. The further that your butt or your hips are away from the wall, especially being straight against the wall, the less that the weight is actually being placed on your feet straight down, and the more your hands and grip need to do more work to keep you on the wall because your center of mass and gravity is, well, further away from those points. Generally, the closer your hips are to the wall, the better. You might feel like you're climbing the wall sideways. That is perfectly normal because now the weight is being distributed where you want. Ah, see, those legs have come back. That will also mean that sometimes you'll need to switch sides and swivel, meaning one side of your hips will be against the wall. You turn around and bring the other side of your hip against the wall. That's good, as you've just been introduced to the first pieces of technique. This, in combination with what we just talked about trying to focus on keeping your arms straight, should be the main method in which you are trying to climb higher up on the walls, allowing you to scale much more efficiently. The other fundamental is to step on the toes, your tippy toes, on your little piggies, not the middle of your foot, which seems to be the instinct when you're first starting out. This will help you get more height, being able to stand on way smaller holds, and shift your weight. And that swivel technique that we just talked about of keeping your hips close, That's going to be able to be done on the tips of your toes. With those 3 fundamental body positioning, you are going to end up learning a lot of techniques, but let's go over some beginner techniques that you should be thinking of when you're on the wall. That's going to make you look like more like Spider-Man instead of someone who has seizures when they're at certain heights. Trying to static climb instead of dynamically climbing. Static climb just means your movements are nice and controlled, and you're never really jumping between one hold or another. You're almost able to reach every single piece. While dynamic means you're jumping and doing way more power moves. Jumping, scaling, doing those crazy things. Yes, those power moves are fun and impressive, but they take a lot of energy, and you might be doing some moves that are so inefficient when first learning. Getting used to the right muscles and the body position will allow you to start adding those fun dynamic moves as much as you want later on, and they're going to be very useful and use all your limbs, even if they're not on a rock hold. That can be using these triangles called volumes that are usually always allowed and used in any route, or using the wall itself. This mostly has to go with your feet. So if your foot is simply pressed against the wall, or you're putting it out to the side to control your momentum so you don't swing out, is getting into a technique called flagging. As long as you're always using your hands and your feet at all times, even if they're not on a rock hold to help you get up or to counterbalance, you're gonna start picking up on these techniques almost naturally. And lastly, is one of the biggest mistakes that I did starting out was always be moving your feet up. A good rule of thumb is when you're starting out is if you have to move one of your hands, you should probably move one of your feet alternatively. Think about climbing a ladder. This should fix itself if you're focusing on the earlier tips of climbing up with your legs, but it's always nice to just keep thinking of it. Thinking about these small points, technique, and body positioning is way more important, and you're probably gonna end up learning the techniques that have these fancy names to them anyways instinctually. But what if the issue isn't technical or physical? What if it's mental? Maybe you're afraid of failing, or maybe you're afraid of heights. Good news though, no one is afraid of heights, but every single person is afraid of falling. The difference is how sure we are that we're not gonna fall, or if we do fall, we're safe. So that means you need to practice the fear, the part that you are actually scared of. You wanna start by practice falling from the spots or the heights that you are scared of, especially if you're someone who climbs down instead of attempting a move, or feels like they're just too high up and they just climb down. Start where you're comfortable, doesn't matter where that is. Go to that height, fall, and then work your way higher until you keep working to the top. You are either gonna start trusting your own skill to be able to complete whatever this is, you're gonna start trusting the mat, or you're gonna be trusting the equipment if you're lead climbing, or the technique that you're able to do when you fall. You don't want the fear to be stopping you from trying certain moves in the first place, because you might be able to do it physically, you just don't trust that part of you yet. You want to be falling eventually, as it means you're trying something that is pushing your comfort zone or your physical abilities. It means you're pushing limits, and the more you can do that, the more you're going to get better. When you're at the gym and you're practicing these tips, you want to make sure that you're using your time wisely. No matter what, you have a limited amount of time that you're going to be able to use at the gym, depending on physical ability or the amount of time that you have booked to be in that gym in the first place. Either way, you want to use the time that you have as efficiently as you can. Big mistake that I started out was to make sure you are resting between routes. If you rapid fire between attempts, you're gonna get burnt out very quickly. If you can go right away, there's a good chance that the routes that you're doing are too easy and you're ready to step it up. Resting around 2 to 5 minutes and stretching before you go to the next rule is a good range to kind of aim for. This rest works out when you're climbing with someone else and you are taking turns. Proper rest allows you to do more on the wall itself, especially if you're doing the difficulty you should. Play hard, rest harder. And while you're not climbing, watch what other people's do. Seeing other people's body movements and how they solve problems from an outside perspective will help your brain learn and understand a lot faster and better. The other perspective is you're getting more information to help you be able to do the thing you want to be able to do. And of course, don't be afraid to ask others for help. Rock climbing is an amazing, friendly, and welcoming community. They're going to be happy to help you. You're going to learn a lot more from people who are better than you and have more experience. Who knows, maybe you'll learn something or you'll even make a couple of new friends. Isn't that what this is all about? That's right. This is a long con to tell you about the real, true advice, which is the power of friendship, the thing that we hold inside. Forget all the other tips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, doesn't matter. The power of friendship is the true emotion. It's the true thing that'll be able to make you better at anything. But what do you think? Was any of this useful advice? Did you appreciate any of the rock climbing tips that you're going to use next time you go scale those walls? Or do you have any other useful tips for people who are just getting into rock climbing? I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. And if you ever want to join on any other adventures, check out other of my videos. You can always hit me up on social media so I can see your rock scaling or any other adventure skills. And I will see you at the next adventure.